Hello, and welcome to Cindy's Corner. Today, boys and girls, if you've got the book Uncle Frank's Pit, go get it so you can follow along. This book, we're going to talk about it afterwards. It's a very good book. Here's our title page, Uncle Frank's Pit. Its author and illustrator is Matthew McElligott. Last summer, we invited Uncle Frank to visit us. Surprisingly, he did. You see, Uncle Frank never visited anyone. In fact, he seldom left his workshop. He even slept there. Just the same, we always invited him. I can only stay a few hours, said Uncle Frank. I'm in the middle of an important project. A month later, he was still with us. So, Frank, said my dad, how about that important project? Project? Said Uncle Frank. Oh, that can wait. What's for dinner? One morning, I woke up to a strange sound coming from the backyard. Uncle Frank was hopping in circles, holding a long stick in front of him. Hanging from the end of the stick was a rusty coat hanger. The antenna from our old TV was taped to his hat. Said Uncle Frank every few minutes. What's he doing? That night at dinner, Uncle Frank said, I have something very important to tell you all. You're leaving? Said my dad. Already? Heavens no, said Uncle Frank. In fact, it looks like I'll be here quite a while. I've done some tests and I've discovered something very interesting. My dad began to fidget in his chair. Did you know, said Uncle Frank, these are dinosaur bones buried. There are dinosaur bones buried in your backyard. You can't be serious, said my mom. Impossible, said my dad. Then it's settled, said Uncle Frank. I'll start digging tomorrow. For the next week, I helped Uncle Frank dig. Before long, the hole was pretty deep. You know what I hate, said Uncle Frank one afternoon. I hate climbing out of this hole every time we want to take a break. I thought about it for a minute. We've got some old furniture in the basement. Super, said Uncle Frank. We spent the afternoon lowering some old chairs and a table down into the pit. Uncle Frank arranged them in a circle. All the comforts of home, said Uncle Frank. You want to live in a hole? Here they are. As the days went by, Uncle Frank started moving more and more things into the hole. First, he brought down a radio so he could listen to music while he worked. Then he added lanterns for digging after dark. He set up a cot so he could spend the night, and he even hung pictures on the wall. After 2 weeks of digging, we hadn't found a single dinosaur bone. "What's the rush?" said Uncle Frank. "Frank," said my dad one morning, "I've been doing some reading. If there really are any bones down there—" "Not bones," said Uncle Frank. "I did more tests. It's oil." "Oil?" said my dad. "In fact," said Uncle Frank, "we're so close I can almost smell it." "It smells?" said my dad. "By the way," said Uncle Frank, "can I borrow the TV and a really long extension cord?" The next weekend, Uncle Frank said to my mom, "Is it okay if I have a few friends over tonight?" "Of course," said my mom. "Just give me a few minutes to tidy up the house." "That won't be necessary," said Uncle Frank. That night, I got up around midnight to get a glass of water. Uncle Frank's party was still going strong. Down in the hole. A few weeks later, the plumber showed up. He said he had Uncle Frank's hot tub. My dad flipped his lid. "This has gone far enough," he shouted. "It's time we told Frank a thing or two." "Go easy on him, honey," said my mom. "He means well." Uncle Frank was in the backyard putting in a mailbox. "Frank," said my dad, "we need to talk." "Talk?" said Uncle Frank. "Sure. Come on down. I've got snacks." What's he built? One by one, we climbed down into the hole. Uncle Frank turned on the lights. "I don't believe it," said my dad. "Oh my," said my mom. "Cool," I said. "Hey, Frank," said the plumber, "where do you want this thing?" "Over in the corner," said Uncle Frank. "Frank, enough is enough," said my dad. "You can't live here. This isn't your house. It's a hole in the ground." "He's right," said my mom. "You have been down here almost 2 months. Maybe you were mistaken about the bones." "Oh," said my dad. "Treasure," said Uncle Frank, "and there's no mistake. These things just take time. I'll be done by Christmas." "Christmas?" said my dad. "Christmas?" He started to hop up and down. "Hey, Frank," said the plumber, "what's this?" "What? What?" said Uncle Frank. "This thing buried in the corner. It's blocking my pipes." "It's probably just a rock," said Uncle Frank. "Dig around it." "It doesn't look like a rock," said my dad. "Hand me the shovel." "How about a pretzel instead?" said Uncle Frank. Later, said my dad. Everyone gathered around as he began to dig. Keep at it, said my mom. I think there's something there. I can see it too. It was definitely not a rock. Frank, said my dad, I think you've done it. Uncle Frank was speechless. For a few weeks, things were pretty crazy. The newspapers came and took our pictures, and we even got to be on TV. We gave the statue to the museum. They put up a plaque with Uncle Frank's name on it. He didn't seem to care. They drug out. One morning when we came down for breakfast, Uncle Frank was waiting for us at the table. He had his suitcase with him, and he was wearing his hat. The rest of his body was covered in aluminum pie plates. He looked happier than he had in weeks. Frank, said my dad, you're not leaving, are you? I'm afraid so, said Uncle Frank. As he stood, the pie plates made a sound like wind chimes. I've had a lovely visit, but I'm picking up some signals. What kind of signals? Said my mom. I'm not sure, said Uncle Frank, but it's something big. Over near Aunt Edith's place. I'd better check it out. Frank, said my dad, come back and visit any time. You can count on it, said Uncle Frank. Now, have you ever had an Uncle Frank to visit? And they just kept staying and staying? Did they dig a hole? What happened? Have you ever had somebody that stayed a little too long and then all of a sudden it was okay? Maybe they just needed some little help, right? Tell me on Cindy's Corner about a time that maybe you've stayed somewhere too long. Maybe at grandma's, grandpa's, aunts, uncles, cousins. Maybe you've stayed too long. Or you can tell me if somebody stayed too long at your house. Okay? I want to share this book because we all need to be reminded we all have a purpose. Everybody has a purpose. Make sure you share your comments. I can't wait to read them on Cindy's Corner. And give us a thumbs up. And make sure you subscribe. You don't want to miss another Cindy's Corner. Have a great day. Make sure you tell your friends about Cindy's Corner. Share us.